On the day I donated my kidney, I never thought my wife, Rebecca Tanner, would cut open her own heart and confess her regrets. After all, she had staged her own death in a bombing. Also, she and Mason Sanders could test my loyalty. All she left me was $2 billion in gambling debt and a contract selling me into slavery. The creditor said they would leave her body in the grave and spare it from being fed to the hyenas. But to do that, I had to sign a contract with my blood and become their pet from then on. After that, I was locked in an iron cage beneath an underground fighting ring. By day, they chained me up and forced me to lick the blood from the winner's shoes. At night, they injected me with drugs and threw me into the fighting ring, turning me into a living toy for the wealthy to bet on. One broken rib doubled the stakes. One lost tooth added another $10,000. When I heard that my parents had been stripped and thrown into the mouth of a volcano alive, I broke completely. Covered in blood, I snapped the iron chain and rushed to the volcano. Instead, I found my dead wife gently lighting Mason's cigarette. Mason puffed out a ring of smoke and sneered. "We still have 10 seconds left on the bet, Rebecca. You've lost." I froze as my mind went blank. Rebecca stood there, disappointment written all over her face. She was supposed to have been blown to pieces 5 years ago. "You couldn't even wait for another 10 seconds, Ethan?" she sneered. "Is your love always this cheap? I've finally seen what kind of man you are, thanks to Mason agreeing to make this bet with me." My ears rang. My voice stuck inside me. "What bet?" "A bet on your loyalty." Rebecca's tone was relaxed, as if chatting about something ordinary. "The explosion 5 years ago was staged. I just wanted to see if you'd stay loyal." Before she could finish, bodyguards carried 2 stretchers over. I rushed forward, hands shaking so badly it took forever to peel back the white sheets. When I saw my parents' charred bodies, my legs gave out. I dropped to my knees, unable to force out a single tear. Mason hid behind Rebecca, his voice trembling. "I only wanted to play a game and let the wolves out. I didn't think they would hurt Ethan's parents. When I saw them mauled beyond recognition and crying in pain, I couldn't bear it, so I helped free them from suffering. Who knew they would look so ugly when they died?" I charged at him in a rage, but bodyguards kicked me to the ground. Rebecca covered Mason's eyes, glancing coldly at the bodies. "How disgusting. Get rid of them now." The car pulled into the most expensive neighborhood in the city. The owner of the underground fighting ring, where I had spent 5 years licking shoes, bowed to Rebecca, smiling. "Don't worry, miss. Those 2 old husks have already been thrown into the volcano. Not even ashes are left. Nothing will be traced back to Mason." I turned to run outside, but Rebecca grabbed me. "They've already been burned to ashes. What else do you want? Are you trying to disgust Mason on purpose?" Every drop of blood went cold. I looked at the face I knew so well and no longer recognized. "Did you arrange everything over the past 5 years?" My voice trembled. "Did you kill my parents too?" She pushed me away, taking out a wet wipe to clean her fingers one by one. "It was just a bet. You shouldn't have played if you couldn't handle it. If Mason hadn't taken pity on you, you wouldn't even have the right to stand here." A smile appeared on my face. I laughed until my whole body trembled. Mason whispered, "Has he gone crazy with happiness?" Happiness? Was I supposed to be happy that I took on $2 billion in debt because of her death and sold myself out like a pet? Happy that I broke my ribs 7 times and lost 4 teeth just to pay off the debt from her fake death? Or happy that wolves mauled my parents to death, their bodies burned to nothing, while I had to thank their killers? A sharp pain tore through my chest. I fell to my knees and coughed up a mouthful of blood. Mason recoiled in fear. Rebecca pulled him into her arms, glaring at me. "Ethan, you're still as pathetic as ever." She ordered the bodyguards to drag me to the river and wash the blood from my body. I thought of the medical report I received yesterday. 1 month left to live, at most. I had planned to take my parents back to my hometown once I was free, then find a quiet place to scatter my wife's ashes. There was nothing left. I took the soggy business card from my pocket and made the call. "Does your son still need a kidney? You can have mine." The person on the other end was so thrilled he could barely speak. "I'll give you anything you want. Money, power, anything. Just save my son." My mouth formed a smile. "Then make Mason Sanders spend the rest of his life burning in hellfire." I hung up before he could answer. The organ donation surgery was set for 3 days later. With the spare money I saved from the fighting ring over the past 5 years, I bought my parents a quiet plot in a cemetery. At the very least, I wanted to erect a memorial. I did not want them to die without anything to remember them by, and when I died, I wanted to be buried with them. But as soon as I reached the cemetery entrance, someone slammed me to the ground. Rebecca kicked me in the chest. "Where's the money? What did you spend it on? Do you know Mason was humiliated in front of his friends today?" I swallowed the blood rising in my throat, my heart growing cold. She took the money I risked my life earning over the past 5 years for granted, handing it to Mason to waste. When she had been with me in the past, she pretended to be poor. I saved every cent to buy her jewelry when all she ever gave me was a $2 keychain. Mason followed behind her, his face dark with displeasure. I already told my friends I was going to bid on that sports car, but when it was time to pay, the account was empty. They all laughed at me for bragging. Rebecca comforted him gently, then turned and yelled at me. "You've just found out who I really am, and you already can't wait to throw money around. You're so vain." I suddenly remembered when we were at our poorest, when we could not even afford medicine for a cold. I toughed it out until the infection turned acute, trembling on the floor in pain. Back then, she held me and cried all night, saying she would trade her own life for mine. I thought she really cared, but only now did I understand she would rather watch me die in pain than spend a single cent to help me. I stayed quiet and did not tell her I used the money to buy a plot in the cemetery. Rebecca looked me up and down, laughing. "An animal will forever be an animal. You were locked in a cage for 5 years, and the second you got out, all you did was waste money." I watched her leave with Mason, then turned and walked back. Before I took more than a few steps, someone covered my head from behind and dragged me into a car. When I woke up, I was lying naked in the middle of a mall. All the blood in my body froze as the people around me whispered and stared. "How disgusting. How can someone like that deserve to live? Look at how pathetic he is. He might as well die. I wouldn't take him even for free. Forget about paying for anything for him." The curses came from all directions. Someone spat on me, while another threw bottles and crumpled paper. After what felt like forever, I was finally freed and staggered back home. As soon as I went inside, I saw Mason holding a glass of wine, tasting it slowly. He raised his glass with a grin. You're back? Look at the sports car I just bought. $200,000. Cool, right? $200,000. That was exactly how much those people bet on me each time they tortured me over the past 5 years. I finally lost control, rushing forward to grab him by the collar. What did I ever do to you? Why are you treating me like this? Before I could finish, a hard leather bag smashed into my head. Rebecca glared at me. How dare you touch him, Ethan? I haven't even talked to you about the money, and now you attack him? Beg him for his forgiveness. 2 bodyguards kicked the back of my knees, forced me down, and slammed my head against the floor. My forehead split open, and I almost passed out. Meanwhile, Rebecca went upstairs with Mason. A cleaner came over to wipe the floor, spitting on me in disgust. What rotten luck! I'm the one who has to clean up this mess. I could not make a sound. My head tilted to the side before I finally lost consciousness. But before that happened, I vaguely heard Rebecca calling my name anxiously from somewhere far away. When I woke up, Rebecca was standing beside the bed, with a lab report. The doctor said you should get some proper rest over the next 2 days. There was no warmth in her voice, and my heart tightened. Had she found out? But the next second, she sneered. Are you done pretending? Coughing blood didn't work, so now you're faking a terminal illness? After 5 years in the underground fighting ring, you still haven't learned a thing. All you know is to use these filthy tricks to fool others. I stared blankly, then lowered my head and forced a smile. Right, I had almost forgotten. She was no longer the Rebecca who would feel sorry for me. Just then, Mason pushed the door open. He spoke in a sincere tone. I know you feel terrible because of all that anger you felt from Rebecca buying me a sports car. I heard snakes are good for your condition, so I had someone catch the best snakes for you. Rebecca's voice softened. You don't have to be so nice to him. He made himself sick with his own mood. Who else can he blame but himself? Mason smiled, waving for the bodyguards to bring in a cage full of snakes. I instinctively tried to move away, and Rebecca's face darkened instantly. Mason is just trying to help you, yet you're still so ungrateful? Hold him down. The bodyguards pinned me hard against the bed. Meanwhile, Mason picked up a snake from the cage with a pair of tongs, smiling. I even learned how to handle snakes just to treat you, Ethan. Let me help you. The venomous snake's sharp fangs sank into my arm, but he deliberately let go, as if he had panicked. He stepped back, knocking the entire cage onto me. As he watched dozens of snakes bite into me, he smiled in contempt. Does it hurt? But you spent 5 years in a place like that. This little pain should be nothing, right? Actually, when you were getting beaten in the underground fighting ring, Rebecca was watching through the security cameras. She even chose some of the things they did to you. I really don't understand how she ever fell for a broke loser like you. Cold sweat broke out from the pain, but I clenched my teeth and stayed silent. Mason stared into my eyes with bitter hatred. You were beaten like an animal by so many people, but somehow, you still survived. That being said, Rebecca can only care about me. He suddenly picked up a snake, grabbed my hand, and pressed it toward his own arm, screaming, Ethan, I'm so sorry. Please don't make the snake bite me. Rebecca rushed over and pulled us apart. When she saw the bloody mark on Mason's arm, she raised her hand and slapped me. Ethan, Mason's being so good to you, and this is how you repay him? Where's your conscience? I tried to sit up. He brought the snakes here. Slap. Mason suddenly slapped himself and cut me off, crying. I'm so sorry, Ethan. It was all my fault. Please don't hurt me anymore. Then, his body went limp, and he fainted. I gritted my teeth to explain, but Rebecca's murderous gaze stopped me cold. At her order, several bodyguards tore open my clothes. The cold tip of a needle pressed against my skin. Fear and despair took over. No! Rebecca looked at me coldly. Mason must have been poisoned, and he'll need a transfusion. You should be thankful that I'm even giving you this opportunity. She turned to the bodyguards. Draw as much as you can, in case Mason needs more. She helped Mason up and left without looking back. Following her orders, the bodyguards drew a liter of blood from me. By the end of the day, my whole body was torn open, my face as pale as a ghost. When the doctor came to check on me, he asked with pity, Are we still doing the surgery tonight? I nodded. When I saw Mason again, his cheeks were rosy as he proudly waved the brand new watch on his wrist at me. Rebecca just bought this for me. It cost about $100,000. Rebecca did not even enter the hospital room. She stood outside the door and asked, Have you learned your lesson? Will you touch Mason again? As long as you behave, we can stay married. I'll have my dad give you a cushy job, and you won't have to live in poverty anymore. I'll give you one night to think it over. Refuse, and you can go out and beg. Rebecca, I no longer had a tomorrow. Listening to her footsteps fading away, I suddenly felt relieved. As I lay on the operating table, only one thought appeared in my mind. I can finally go see Dad and Mom. Rebecca suddenly felt a wave of unease in her chest, as she was accompanying Mason somewhere else. For once, she left him behind and hurried back to the hospital room. Ethan, come back with me if you're done causing trouble. But all she found was an empty hospital room. She grabbed the nurse who had come to clean the bed. Where's the patient that was in bed 3? The nurse looked at her strangely. Wasn't he already sent to be cremated?
The words didn't make sense at first. Cremated. Rebecca's grip tightened on the nurse's collar, so hard the fabric creased under her fingers. What are you talking about? He was just here. He was in bed. He was. The nurse flinched. He was brought to the morgue an hour ago. The paperwork was already signed. Rebecca went still. For the first time in years, her expression didn't look cold or amused or bored. It looked empty. No, she said flatly. That's not possible. Behind her, Mason arrived slowly, adjusting his watch, frowning at the tension in the air. What's going on? He asked. Rebecca didn't answer him. She was already moving. Down the corridor. Fast. Then faster. Her heels struck the floor like something breaking loose. Security tried to stop her at the morgue doors, but she shoved past them, pale now, breath uneven. The body on the slab was covered. Labeled. Signed. Confirmed. She stood there for a long time before she finally lifted the sheet. There was nothing dramatic left to see. No final expression. No last words carved into his face. Just silence reduced to something physical. A bracelet still on his wrist. Cheap. Worn. Something he had never thrown away. Her fingers trembled. "This is wrong," she whispered. "He can't die. Not like this." A staff member hesitated behind her. He was already terminal. The hospital received confirmation of a late-stage condition. Internal bleeding, organ failure. He refused further treatment after donation clearance. Rebecca turned sharply. "Donation?" she snapped. The staff member swallowed. His kidney was successfully extracted per emergency agreement. It went to a child in critical condition. The rest deteriorated rapidly afterward. For the first time, Rebecca looked unsteady. Not angry. Not in control. Unsteady. Mason's voice echoed down the hall as he finally caught up. "Wait." He stopped when he saw her face. And then the morgue doors opened again. A man in a suit stepped in holding a file. "Rebecca Tanner?" he asked. She didn't respond. He opened the folder anyway. This was delivered to be read upon confirmation of death. He placed it on the counter. A sealed envelope. Her name written in Ethan's handwriting. The same handwriting she hadn't seen in years. Her fingers hovered over it for a second before she tore it open. The room stayed quiet as she read. Line by line. Color draining. Breath shortening. Until finally, her knees gave out. Mason stepped forward. "What is it?" She didn't answer him. She couldn't. Because the letter wasn't begging. It wasn't pleading. It was structured. Prepared. Final. Inside it, Ethan had documented everything. Debt transfers, gambling accounts, offshore holdings, the fighting ring records, the betting ledger tied to Mason's games. And at the very end, one sentence. "If you are reading this, then I stopped surviving before I stopped forgiving." Attached was a drive key. The nurse hesitated. "We were instructed to submit that to the Financial Crimes Unit immediately upon his death." Rebecca's head snapped up. "What unit?" The man in the suit answered calmly. "The one already investigating Mason Sanders." Silence. Then, somewhere far away in the building, alarms started to ring. Not medical. Legal. Systemic. Lockdown protocols. Mason took a step back. "Rebecca, what is this?" But she was no longer looking at him. For the first time, she was looking at the consequences of him. And they were arriving fast. On screens down the hall, transactions began flashing. Accounts freezing. Assets flagged. Names appearing. Her father's companies. Mason's shell businesses. The underground ring's ownership chain, now fully exposed. And then, the final notification appeared on every monitor. Estate transfer complete. Executor, Ethan Tanner. Rebecca whispered, almost soundless. "He planned this before he died." A guard rushed in. "Ma'am, the authorities are outside." Mason grabbed her arm. "You said this was under control." She finally turned to him. Slowly, like something inside her had just finished breaking. "No," she said. Her voice was quiet. "I said he was under control." Outside the hospital, sirens grew louder. Inside, the file on the counter remained open. And for the first time since it all began, Rebecca realized the last person she thought she was playing with had already finished the game. Rebecca didn't move when the sirens got closer. They weren't just outside anymore. They were inside the building. Boots striking tile, radios crackling, voices overlapping as departments collided into one space. Mason tried to pull her back. "We can still fix this." "We can." "Rebecca, talk to me." She finally looked at him. But it wasn't the same look she used before. There was no warmth left to withdraw. No affection left to weaponize. Just recognition. Like she was seeing him clearly for the first time and realizing there was nothing underneath. "You said it was a game," she said softly. Mason forced a laugh. "It was a game. You said that too." "You agreed." "I agreed to watch him break," she cut in. Her voice didn't rise. That was what made it worse. Mason froze. Rebecca turned back to the file on the counter. Ethan's handwriting sat there like a quiet accusation, neat, deliberate, patient. "I didn't think he'd plan," she murmured. "I thought he was just enduring." A commotion erupted at the entrance of the morgue. Agents poured in. Not hospital staff this time. Federal badges. Financial Crime Division. Organized Trafficking Task Force. The room changed temperature. A man stepped forward, holding up a warrant. "Rebecca Tanner. Mason Sanders. You are both under investigation for conspiracy, illegal debt coercion, and participation in an underground fighting syndicate resulting in multiple fatalities. Mason's face drained. This is a misunderstanding. Rebecca didn't speak. She was still reading the letter, still turning pages like she expected the words to become less real if she went slowly enough. But they didn't. They only got sharper. The last page wasn't a confession. It was instructions, a map of everything she had touched, even the smallest things, even the things she had forgotten, even the things she thought no one had ever noticed. A quiet realization passed through her, cold and precise. Ethan hadn't just survived them. He had documented them, endured them, and then arranged the ending. A voice in her memory surfaced suddenly. Him years ago, bent over a hospital bed, laughing softly despite fever. "If anything ever happens to me," he had said once, "don't waste time pretending you didn't know me." She had rolled her eyes back then, called him dramatic, called him emotional. She swallowed hard. Now it didn't feel dramatic. It felt like preparation. The agent stepped closer. "You will both come with us." Mason backed away instinctively. "Rebecca, tell them this is your family's influence. You can fix it." But she didn't respond, because her phone vibrated. Once, then again, an unknown number. She opened it without thinking. A single voice message loaded automatically. Static at first, then Ethan's voice. Weak, controlled, already fading even when recorded. Not begging, not angry, just final. "I know you'll find this late," it said. Rebecca's hand tightened around the phone. "I made sure of that." Silence in the morgue. Even the agents paused slightly, not interrupting. His voice continued. "You didn't lose me the day I died. You lost me every time you decided I was still something you could use. A breath, barely there. I stopped being yours a long time ago." A pause, then softer. "And I stopped being afraid of you before you ever noticed." The recording ended. No dramatic last words. Just silence. Rebecca stood completely still. For the first time, she looked like someone who had run out of explanations. Not excuses. Explanations. Mason suddenly moved toward the exit. He didn't get far. Two agents stopped him instantly, forcing his arms behind his back. He shouted, panicked now, voice cracking. "I didn't kill anyone." "She did." She agreed. "Rebecca, say something." She didn't look at him. That was the moment he understood. The agreement had meant nothing. Not loyalty. Not protection. Not even shared guilt. Just convenience. As Mason was dragged away, his voice echoed down the corridor until it disappeared entirely. Rebecca remained in the morgue alone with the file. And the body that was already gone. A nurse approached carefully. His remains were handled according to his instructions. Rebecca didn't ask what that meant. She already knew. There would be no grave she could stand in front of. No place to return to. No version of him left waiting for her to feel anything. Just a system he had set in motion. Once she was now inside. She finally spoke, barely audible. "Where did they take him?" The nurse hesitated. He requested anonymity. No marker. No visitation rights. Just release. Rebecca closed her eyes. For the first time, there was no anger in her expression. Only something quieter. Something that had nowhere left to go. Outside, the sirens kept going. Inside, the morgue doors stayed open. And Rebecca Tanner stood still in the exact place where she finally understood. Ethan hadn't just escaped her. He had made sure she would never be able to follow. Epilogue, ruin. 2 weeks later, the city stopped saying Ethan Tanner's name. Not because they forgot him. Because the systems that carried his name were already eating everything else. The financial crimes report never made the evening news in full. It didn't need to. Entire corporations collapsed in silence first. Accounts frozen, shell companies exposed. Offshore pipelines snapped shut like veins being clamped off. Then came the arrests. Then the sealed hearings. Then the disappearances from public records. Mason Sanders never made it to trial. He tried to talk his way out of custody 3 separate times, each version of his story contradicting the last. By the 4th interview, his legal team stopped asking him to explain anything at all. He was transferred out of state. And after that, there were no more updates. Just a line in the system that read, pending jurisdictional resolution. No one ever clarified what that meant. Rebecca Tanner didn't attend any of it. Not the hearings. Not the statements. Not even the asset seizures. She stayed in the same place for 3 days after the morgue. Just standing in her apartment. No movement. No calls. No orders. The world kept expecting her to react like she always had. coldly, strategically, decisively. But there was nothing left to direct, because everything she had built her identity around had already been accounted for in Ethan's files. Even her reactions. Especially her reactions. On the fourth day, a courier arrived. No knock. Just a sealed box left at her door with her name printed neatly on top. Inside, asterisk, her wedding ring. Asterisk, a copy of their marriage certificate, marked void. Asterisk, a USB drive labeled, do not open unless you still think you won. She stared at it for a long time, then plugged it in anyway. The screen opened to a single video. Ethan, sitting alone. No hospital. No cage. No blood. Just a plain room, too quiet to be real. He looked thinner than she remembered. Not beaten. Not broken. Finished. He spoke first. I didn't leave you nothing, he said. A pause. I left you exactly what you built. The video cut. Next file. A ledger. Every time she had said it's just a game. Every time she had watched and called it necessary. Every time she had chosen Mason's smile over someone else's pain. Documented. Timestamped. Legally verified. The kind of record that didn't need emotion to convict. The kind that didn't care who she used to be. Rebecca closed the laptop slowly. For the first time in her life, she didn't have a next move. Not because she had lost power, but because Ethan had removed the game entirely. No opponent. No leverage. No audience. Just consequences continuing without her permission. Outside, the city moved normally again. Cars. Lights. People pretending they weren't built on anything fragile. Inside her apartment, Rebecca finally understood what had been taken from her. Not Ethan's life. Not even his love. It was the belief that she could rewrite what she did afterward. She walked to the window. Down below, the street looked unchanged. That was the cruelest part. Nothing looked like it had ended. But everything had. Her phone lit up one last time. Unknown number. No message. Just a location pin. An empty field outside the city limits. No explanation. No invitation. Only coordinates. Rebecca stared at it for a long time, then locked her phone without saving it. Because for the first time, she realized Ethan hadn't left her a place to find him. He had only left her a place to understand she never would.